It's good to be with you all this morning. We say hello to those watching online and those who will be watching online later. Do we have any idea how many people on average watch our service online, live or at a later time? Have we ever done that? Just out of curiosity. 16 right now. We send our greetings to you all watching online from everybody present here today in church. It's good to be together this February 15, which is a very special day in our family. And I'm not going to tell you why, but those of you who know, you know. A while ago, I came across this material on Ruth, and when I saw this snow this week, and there was something about it that I thought that it would be good for us to look at this morning. And we're going to look at the life of Ruth this morning. I have this corner window in our living room. There's a few windows, and right in the corner, we put a couch over there, and I like to sit out there on that couch and put my feet up and just watch the world go by, and especially when it's snowing. That's really, really beautiful and relaxing. And it made me think this week about the change of seasons, and we're going to talk about that this morning. When I was much younger, I used to marvel at the change of seasons. My heart was filled with wonder and excitement as the leaves would change various colors in the fall. Joy would fill my heart at the first flakes of snow that fell in the winter. My heart would soar at the first signs of spring that brought budding new life from the ground. Oh, the smells in the air. When summer arrived, I couldn't wait to play outside in my shorts and short-sleeved shirts, leaving my winter coat behind, which was packed away until the next season. For the first few years of my life, I grew up in my grandparents' house out in the countryside. They lived a good 40-50 miles from the city, but it was a whole world away from the big city. And transportation was of such a nature that it seemed like the city was far away. To take that bus, to do that hour and a half or 2 hours in the bus, it just seemed like it's a huge distance away. And it was a wonderful childhood living with my grandparents. My parents were busy. They had to work, and my mother would just come over for the weekends, and we would spend the weekends together. I remember on Friday afternoon, the bus would come in about 4:30 in the afternoon, and our house was just a few houses away from the end of the line for that bus line. And I think the driver actually lived like the last house. So wherever the bus stopped, that's where he parked. And then it was the last bus, and the next morning at 4:30, he would get on the bus and drive the bus back to the city. But on Friday afternoon, I would head out and just wait for my mother to come to us, and we would spend the weekend together. And then on Monday morning, she would get back on the bus and go to the city and go to work and do all of those things. And my father would kind of do the same things. And living out in the country, the seasons, we had all 4 seasons back then, and winter was winter, and spring was spring, and summer was summer, and I so much enjoyed that life out there in that village. But times have changed. As I've grown older, I view seasons differently. Though I try to enjoy each season as I did when I was a child, my adult mind and attitude tends to take over. I'm realizing that with fall and winter comes the cold. And now that I'm older, my body is beginning to creak and moan at the first signs of frigid seasons change. With spring and summer, I know there are thunderstorms and smoldering hot days on the horizon. Rather than seeing the summer sun as welcoming me to come out and play, I see it as a trap for sunburn. And though I need not be overly cautious, I have become more of a prude in my adult years. Just as my perspective of the seasons has changed, so has my perspective on life. sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. We got to be honest with ourselves first and foremost. We got to be honest with each other as well. I long once again for that childlike faith and wonder at the creation of God. I long to take in every season with a renewed sense of adventure and joy. It's when I really stop and take stock of my life that I have come to understand that there are seasons in life. Now, I'm not talking about seasons brought on by age and different life stages. I'm talking about seasons of life that are brought about by life circumstances and situations. I'm talking about experiences that either lead us into the summer of contentment or the winter of disappointment. I'm talking about experiences that lead us into either the fall of hard times or the spring of renewal. Whatever the case, there is one thing I've come to know full well, and that is the change of seasons in life always brings new life. There's a story in the Old Testament that illustrates this perfectly. This story centers around a fascinating character, Ruth of Moab, an immigrant. We're going to consider her story today, and we'll see how she came through each of these seasons. And I want us to take a look at each of the seasons in Ruth's life and think of our own seasons of life we experience as we continue our journey on this earth. By the way, kids, the word that you're going to count this morning is the word Ruth. In the second part of the book of Ruth, our embattled heroine takes some major risks in winning over Boaz, the salvation she has needed all along to lead her from a place of desperation to a place of hope and possibilities. She sought him out for the purpose of marriage, and God blessed her as a result. A risky move that led her to the spring of renewal. In chapter 4, we find Ruth in the summer of contentment. Now, if you have never read the book of Ruth, go home today. It's only a handful of chapters. Go home and read the whole book top to bottom. It's a very interesting story. We're going to just do a few snippets of it this morning. Ruth chapter 4, verse 1. So Boaz went to the town gate and took a seat there. Boaz was a respectable man in the community, an older man that people looked up to in his town. The gate was the place where what happened? What was the gate of the city? It was where judgment took place. So if you had a dispute with one of your neighbors that was not very neighborly and lovingly towards you, you would give him a time and a place, and you would go and speak to the elders. So the gate, there were usually a double gate on each town, right? And so the space in between the gate was the space for justice to be served. It was the space for transactions. It was the space for commerce. It was the gate of the city was a very busy space. Many cities would not allow a lot of people in if you were not from the city, and so there was always a guard there, and most of the business of the city took place within the city gates, meaning in between the outer gate and the inner gate, right? So Boaz went out there, took a seat. Probably he was one of the respectable people that his wisdom was needed and required each and every day to conduct the business of the city. When the family redeemer he had mentioned came by, Boaz called him out. So Ruth comes in, and it's a difficult situation. Naomi, her mother-in-law, lost everybody in her family, her husband, her sons, and somebody needed to provide support to her. And so Boaz was looking for a family redeemer to pick up the responsibility of caring for Naomi's family. When the family redeemer came out, Boaz called him out. Come over here, friend, I want to talk to you. So they sat down together. Then Boaz called 10 leaders from the town and asked them to sit as witnesses. And Boaz said to the family redeemer, you know Naomi, who came back from Moab. She is selling the land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I felt that I should speak to you about it so that you can redeem it if you wish. If you want the land, then buy it here in the presence of these witnesses. But if you don't want it, Let me know right away, because I am next in line to redeem it after you." The man replied, "All right, I will redeem it." Then Boaz told him, "Of course, your purchase of the land from Naomi also requires that you marry Ruth, the Moabite widow. That way she can have children who will carry on her husband's name and keep the land in the family." Read the whole book, all right? There's a dynamic here, and you need to know about this family redeemer and the responsibilities, right? Relationships were a little more complicated or complex or different back in the day, right? Verse 6, "Then I cannot redeem it." When the guy said it comes with a wife and future kids and more mouths to feed and all of that stuff, he backed down. "Because this might endanger my own estate. You redeem the land, I cannot do it." In those days, it was the custom in Israel for anyone transferring a right of purchase to remove his sandal and hand it to the other party. This publicly validated the transaction. So the other family redeemer drew off his sandal as he said to Boaz, "You buy the land." Then Boaz said to the leaders and to the crowd standing around, when something big was happening, everybody would come out to witness it, right? They had no TV back in the day, right? So this is stuff that you want to see with your own eyes. Remember the removing of the shoe, removing of the sandal? Handing it over is a gesture of agreement. Throwing your shoe at somebody is a gesture of disrespect, right? And you've seen that happen also even in modern times. So he takes off his sandal. "You are witnesses that today I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Machlon, and with the land I have acquired Ruth, the Moabite widow of Machlon, to be my wife. This way she can have a son to carry on the family name of her dead husband and to inherit the family property here in his hometown. You are all witnesses today." Then the leaders and all the people standing there replied, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is now coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, from whom all the nation of Israel descended. May you be great in Ephratah and famous in Bethlehem. And may the Lord give you descendants by this young woman who will be like those of our ancestor Perez, the son of Tamar and Judah." So Boaz married Ruth and took her home to live with him. When he slept with her, the Lord enabled her to become pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. And the women of the town said to Naomi, the mother-in-law, "Praise the Lord who has given you a family redeemer today. May he be famous in Israel." Times have changed not a whole lot. Fame was still an ideal for people even back in the day. "May this child restore your youth and care for you in your old age. For he is the son of your daughter-in-law who loves you so much and who has been better to you than 7 sons. What a compliment. Your daughter has been better to you than 7 sons. Quite a compliment. Naomi took care of the baby and cared for him as he were her own. The neighbor women said, "Now at last Naomi has a son again." And they named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse and the grandfather of David. Which David is this one? King David, all right? Verse 18, this is their family line, beginning with their ancestor Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Aminadab. Aminadab was the father of Nahshon. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz. Boaz was the father of Obed, and Obed was the father of Jesse. And Jesse, of course, was the father of David. So this is how the story ends for Ruth. Though Ruth and Naomi both ended up in the summer of contentment, they had come through some hard times together. Now let's briefly take a look at their journey. Elimelech died. This was the husband of Naomi, and Naomi was left with her 2 sons. Ruth chapter 1. Verse 4 says, the 2 sons married Moabite women. One married a woman named Orpah. This is not Oprah, it's Orpah, okay? And the other woman was named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Machlon and Kilion died. This left Naomi alone with her husband or sons. This is a story that starts out promisingly, but quickly turns into a tragedy of epic proportions. All the men in this family perish. And Ruth and Naomi, daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, find themselves in the fall of hard times. With the death of their husbands and Naomi's sons, difficult times had set in, and things looked pretty grim. Nevertheless, these women continue to press on. They had emigrated. They left their country, and they had their own reasons. We're not here to judge people's reasons, right? Everybody has a reason for doing what they're doing. Naomi and her husband and their 2 sons left Israel, left Judah, and they went to a neighboring country. People do that for various reasons. Sometimes there is opportunity, there is economic opportunity, and you want to go for that. In the context I come from, right after the fall of communism in Romania, a lot of people wanted to leave the country in search for economic opportunities. And today, there's over 2 million Romanians who live in France, in Germany, in Italy, lots of them in Spain, in England, all the countries of Europe, even down to Israel. There's a huge Romanian population in Israel because they have a lot of construction jobs available. And people went out and looked for better jobs, for better pay. And a lot of these people, most of them actually send a lot of money back home to help their families. Many families started out by having one parent leave, and then the other parent and the kids stay home. Soon enough, as soon as the first parent got settled in the new country, they called on their partner to come, their spouse to come, and there are a lot of kids in Romania who grew up with no parents. They grew up with their grandparents because their parents just left in search for better economic opportunities. And those parents would work hard, send money home so that their kids could go to better schools and have a better life at home. After a few years, many of these families actually were able to bring their children to be with them, and there are flourishing Romanian populations all over, each and every one of the countries of Europe and beyond. But people leave for other reasons. People leave because it's very hard for them to continue being their own selves in their country of origin. I know a lot of people who came here from the country of Moldova, for instance, where to this day they banished it a couple of years ago, but they had a communist party in the country and they wanted freedom. They were persecuted for being Christians and for being Seventh-day Adventists by communists, and so they left. And thankfully, this country to this day actually gives people from Moldova that are persecuted for their religious beliefs the opportunity to come here and to live and be here in freedom. People look for freedom. When you are not born in freedom and the first taste of freedom you have, you want to go for it. Back in the 70s, my father, he wanted to come to the United States. And this is the height of communism in Romania. And a few of his buddies decided to cross the border illegally, to leave Romania and find their way to America. They made plans for it. There's a huge river, the Danube River, that covers most of the southern border of Romania and a little bit of the western part of it. And they made plans to actually cross the Danube River into the former Yugoslavia. And that country had an asylum program in place for everybody that would make it to Belgrade, actually. And in that asylum in Belgrade, people could apply with the U.S. Embassy and see if they would be allowed to come in here. So my father pulled out at the last minute, but his friends attempted to cross the border, and only one of them made it on the other side. A lot of people go out in search of freedom. You don't know what the lack of freedom is, how it feels, what that means for the development of one's understanding of the world they live in. It has a huge influence on the choices they make. And humanity has been very cruel. We are very cruel to one another sometimes, and we could be really nasty to other people. You add on top of that the lack of freedom, you add on top of that persecution, and it makes it really hard for people to exist. And so some courageous people go out in search of freedom, and they're willing to sacrifice everything to achieve or at least get on that journey towards freedom. I have a friend, actually, several people that I know of who went to a port, broke into a container, and they had been at sea for a few months before landing in Canada, in one of the big ports in Canada. Came out of the container. Very few of them actually make this trip because to be inside of a container for 2 months or 3 months with no matter how much water you bring with you, no matter how much food you bring with you, it's still going to be really, really challenging. And luckily, my friend made it, and he is alive today, but many of his friends in that container did not make the trip. People are desperate. They go in search of opportunity, in search of freedom. They have their own reasons. We don't know what people's reasons are for leaving their country. But Naomi and her husband and their family, they decided to leave together. And they went to Moab. We would look at the map today and we would say, hey, that's 100 miles the other way. Yeah, but it was a different country, a different environment, different opportunities for them. We don't know what their reasons were for making this trip and for settling in that country, but this turns very wrong for them. What Naomi and Ruth had a difficulty recognizing, and many of us do too, is that it's during the autumn months that seeding takes place. With autumn comes a strange beauty that entices us to slow down. And though we may not realize it at the time, with autumn, a process has begun which is intended to bring new life. Parker Palmer, in his book, Let Your Life Speak, says this: in the autumnal events of my own life experience, I am easily fixated on surface appearances, on the decline of meaning, the decay of relationships, the death of a work. And yet, if I look more deeply, I may see the myriad of possibilities being planted to bear fruit in some season yet to come. In retrospect, I can see in my own life what I could not see at the time, how the job I lost helped me find work I needed to do, how the road closed sign turned me toward terrain I needed to travel, how losses that felt irredeemable forced me to discern meanings I needed to know. On the surface, it seemed that life was lessening, but silently and lavishly, the seeds of new life are always being sown. Ruth and Naomi didn't know it at the time, but God was working behind the scenes to plant seeds of new life in spite of their tragic losses. God was at work bringing about good during the fall of hard times. God was at work preparing them for the winter of disappointment that was soon to come. The fall of hard times ended up leading to a winter of disappointment in both Naomi's life and also in Ruth's life. They had lost everything. Their lives had been turned upside down. There was nowhere else to turn but down the lonely road toward home, where only memories of a distant past awaited to remind them of what once was. It was in this winter of disappointment that Naomi said to the women in her hometown of Bethlehem, Ruth chapter 1, 20 and 21, "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Instead, call me Mara, for the Almighty has made life very bitter for me." Mara means bitter. "I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why should you call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer and the Almighty has sent such tragedy?" What most of us neglect to understand is that it's in winter that we're able to see life with new clarity. Palmer claims that winter brings with it several gifts. One gift is beauty, different from the beauty of autumn, but somehow lovelier still. I am not sure that any sight or sound on earth is as exquisite as the hushed descent of a sky full of snow. Another gift is the reminder that times of dormancy and deep rest are essential to all living things. Despite all appearances, of course, nature is not dead in winter. It has gone underground to renew itself and prepare for spring. Winter is a time when we are admonished and even inclined to do the same for ourselves. But for me, winter has an even greater gift to give. It comes when the sky is clear, the sun is brilliant, the trees are bare, and first snow is yet to come. It is the gift of utter clarity. In winter, one can walk into the woods that had been opaque with summer growth only a few months earlier and see the trees clearly, singly and together, and see the ground they are rooted in. It was in the winter of disappointment that Ruth and Naomi were given greater clarity into life. Little did they know that just beneath the surface of the cold, hard ground, the spring of renewal was beginning to take root. Though Ruth and Naomi had come through the fall of hard times and were nearing their exodus of the winter of disappointment, before long they began to take heart and find hope. After they settled into their new life, Ruth decided to start gleaning in the fields for food. But little did she know at the time her gleaning would lead to a time of renewal and new life. Look at Ruth chapter 2, verse 8. Boaz went over and said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter." That's kind of a lame pickup, right? "Listen, my daughter, stay right here with us. When you gather grain, don't go to any other fields. Stay right behind the women working in my field. See which part of the field they're harvesting, and then follow them. I have warned the young men not to bother you. And when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water they have drawn from the well." Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked. "I am only a foreigner. I'm an immigrant." "Yes, I know," Boaz replied. "But I also know about the love and kindness you have shown your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother and your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully." One thing must be said at this point. Though springtime brings beauty and new life, it always begins ugly. In order for spring to be spring, April rains must come, and this makes the ground soft and muddy. Large, dark, and sinister clouds loom on the horizon with storms that can bring torrential winds, hail, thunder, lightning, even tornadoes. But in spite of all this, it's in spring that we find hope of new life. Palmer reminds us that spring teaches us to look more carefully for the green stems of possibility, for the intuitive hunch that may turn into a larger insight, for the glance or touch that may thaw a frozen relationship, for the stranger's act of kindness that makes the world seem hospitable again. Spring in its fullness is not easy to write about. Late spring is so flamboyant that it caricatures itself, which is why it has long been the province of poets with more passion than skill. But perhaps those poets have a point. Perhaps we're meant to yield to this flamboyance, to understand that life is not always to be measured and meted as winter compels us to do, but to be spent from time to time in a riot of color and growth. Spring beckons us to run barefoot through the fields of God's grace and mercy that has guided us through the hard times and the trials of disappointment. Spring becomes the precursor for the summer of contentment, a time of life when there is joy unspeakable and full of glory. Let me read for you again Ruth and Naomi's summer of content. Chapter 4, verse 13. So Boaz married Ruth and took her home to live with him. When he slept with her, the Lord enabled her to become pregnant. She gave birth to a son. The women of the town said to Naomi, "Praise the Lord, who has given you a family redeemer today. May he be famous in Israel. May this child restore your youth and care for you in your old age. For he is the son of your daughter-in-law who loves you so much and who has been better to you than 7 sons." Naomi took care of the baby, cared for him as if he were her own. The neighbor women said, "Now at last, Naomi has a son again." And they named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse and the grandfather of David. It's in summer that we find abundance and fullness. Naomi and Ruth had a long way to go, but they had finally made it to the fields of abundance. They found their summer of contentment, and life was even sweeter than before. The reality is, God had brought Naomi and Ruth from a life of desolation and aloneness to a life of abundance and community. And it was only through the community that either of them found their summer of contentment. Ladies and gentlemen, God has put us all here together. I believe there is reason to that. If God wanted to, He would have put us all on a different planet. Do you believe that? He could have made a planet for you. He could have made a planet for you. He could have made a planet for you. A bigger planet for me. If God wanted to, He would have created a different environment, a different planet for each and every one of us. And things would have been nice, right? Things would have been beautiful. He would have made an environment where we would have thrived. But for some reason, He decided to put us all together here on this planet. I believe there's purpose behind that. I don't think this is by chance. I believe we belong together. We were created for community. No person is an island. Don't believe that? Try it out. Go out there by yourself. See how long you can survive by yourself. I'm watching these videos of these brave souls who have a little boat and they sail the southern seas, and they go and make videos of themselves on these deserted islands, and they stop and they fish and they build a shelter, and of course the torrential rain comes in the afternoon and tears everything down, and then they build it again and climb for coconuts and get their food from the land, and they live there. But the video lasts about 30 or 40 minutes because they stay there for 1 or 2 or 3 days. And then they need to find a port to get some fuel for their boat in case, the wind is not strong enough, to get, some food in case they're not successful at catching fish. And, you cannot be on your own for too long. We belong together. We are made for community. We are created by a God who is a community in Himself. We belong together. We move forward together. God is blessing us when we are together. Let us discover the beauty of community and continue practicing that in our daily lives. We have a closing song, right? All right. Which one is it? He leadeth me. Wonderful choice. Listen to this as we wrap up. In the human world, abundance does not happen automatically. It is created when we have the sense to choose community, to come together to celebrate and share our common store. Whether the scarce resource is money or love or power or words, the true law of life is that we generate more of whatever seems scarce by trusting its supply and passing it around. Authentic abundance does not lie in secured stockpiles of food or cash or influence or affection, but in belonging to a community where we can give those goods to others who need them and receive them from others when we are in need. Here's the summertime truth. Abundance is a communal act, the joint creation of an incredibly complex ecology in which each part functions on behalf of the whole and in return is sustained by the whole. Community doesn't just create abundance. Community is abundance. Summer is the season when all the promissory notes of autumn and winter and spring come due. When in each year the debts are repaid with compound interest. In summer it is hard to remember that we had ever doubted the natural process, had ever ceded death the last word, had ever lost faith in the powers of new life. Naomi and Ruth found their summer of contentment, but little did they know at the time how abundant this summer would be. For you see, Ruth, the foreigner, Ruth, the immigrant, became the great-grandmother of David, who would in turn be the family line by which the Messiah would come. Ruth and Boaz's union together brought not only abundance to them specifically, but brought abundance of new life for generations to come through the birth of Jesus. Though Naomi and Ruth would have a family redeemer in a man by the name of Boaz, God would inevitably bring forth a family redeemer for all generations and all peoples in a man named Jesus. So what season of life are you in right now? Has the autumn of hard times come knocking at your door? Is it difficult to comprehend the pain and sorrow you feel? Maybe you find yourself in the winter of disappointment. Life has dealt you some tough blows and you feel cold and alone. You wonder if there's more to life than this, and you're hanging on for just one small glimpse of hope. Or maybe you're in the spring of renewal. Like a newborn fawn, you're just learning to gain your footing. Though it's an uphill climb, you can see new life on the way up. Hope is springing forth fresh and new, and you feel that you're going to make it. Or what about the summer of contentment? There may be some of you who have come out on the other side of tragedy with a renewed sense of who you are. You may have a better understanding about life, and God's bountiful blessings may be overwhelming you with joy. Whatever the case, whatever your season of life, we must always remember that the change of seasons always brings new life. As we consider the change of seasons within life, I'm reminded of this story by Max Lucado as we close today. A little boy, story number 1, a little boy is on the beach. On his knees, he scoops and packs the sand with plastic shovels into a bright red bucket. Then he upends the bucket on the surface and lifts it, and to the delight of the little architect, a castle tower is created. All afternoon he will work, spooning out the moat, packing the walls. Bottle tops will be sentries, popsicle sticks will be bridges, a sand castle will be built. Story number 2, big city, busy streets, rumbling traffic, a man in his office. At his desk, he shuffles papers into stacks and delegates assignments. He cradles the phone on his shoulder and punches the keyboard with his fingers. Numbers are juggled and contracts are signed, and much to the delight of the man, a profit is made. All his life, he will work, formulating the plans, forecasting the future. Annuities will be centuries. Capital gains will be bridges. An empire will be built. 2 builders of 2 castles. They have much in common. They shape granules into grandeurs. They see nothing and make something. They are diligent and determined. And for both, the tide will rise and the end will come. Yet that is where the similarities cease. For the boy sees the end, while the man ignores it. Watch the boy as the dusk approaches. As the waves near, the wise child jumps to his feet and begins to clap. There is no sorrow. There is no fear. There is no regret. He knew this would happen. He is not surprised. And when the great breaker crashes into his castle and his masterpiece is sucked into the sea, he smiles. He smiles, he picks up his tools, takes his father's hand, and he goes home. The grown-up, however, is not so wise. As the wave of years collapses on his castle, he is terrified. He hovers over the sandy monument to protect it. He blocks the waves from the walls he has made. Salt water soaked and shivering, he snarls at the incoming tide. It's my castle! It's my castle, he defies. The ocean need not respond. Both know to whom the sand belongs. And I don't know much about sandcastles, but children do. Watch them and learn. Go ahead and build, but build with a child's heart. When the sun sets and the tides take, applaud, salute the process of life. Take your father's hand and go home. Amen.
I want to make we have someone watching online
Amen.
in Jamaica.
Amen.
So send our greetings to the Darliston Church, SDA Church in Jamaica.
Amen.
That's Roxanne's church, just in case you didn't know.